Hello everyone, this is Matthew and welcome to another one of my writing and reading video diaries. Today is April 18th, Good Friday, and it is a holiday up here in Canada. That's why I'm doing my video today, because I thought I'd take advantage of this wonderful holiday to do a video. I had a pretty good week this week. I have to say it's much better than previous weeks. And in fact, I wrote, in total now I have written 20,275 words. And that means I wrote 2,756 words this week, which is pretty good. I have to say that I'm very happy with that. And I mean, I was at one less day too to write that. But oddly enough, I wrote all of this on the streetcar instead of at home. I had a lot of difficulty doing it at home, and so I had to. For some reason, I could only do it on the streetcar, which is, normally I can't write on the streetcar because I'm usually standing up, or, it's very odd writing with someone looking at you. But I did. I wrote it all here, and this is why it's always good to carry a notebook around so that you can capture your thoughts as you are riding around. Um, in general, I was very inspired this week. I was getting ideas from all sorts of places, and I mentioned a few weeks ago that sometimes I get too many ideas, and right now I think I'm getting too many ideas. I kind of want to fit everything in, and you can't fit everything into your book at the same time. It's called a big mess. And I'm having lots and lots of ideas because I'm getting inspired by all sorts of things and places and books that I'm reading, or media that I'm encountering. And one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is this whole idea of anti-symbols. And it was kind of inspired by the Karl Knausgaard discussion that I was having last week, where I was saying that one of the things that I really appreciate about the newness of his book, so I'll show you the book again, is that he is sort of trying to avoid symbols. And I was thinking about this a lot because, well, for many reasons, but one of them was I just watched the most recent episode of Mad Men. Woo, it's back on air. And I wasn't that excited about it, actually, to be honest. I wasn't that crazy about this episode. But there was a scene in it where Dawn and Megan, I'm not going to give really anything away, so don't worry about spoilers. Dawn and Megan are talking, and they're in Megan's house in the Hollywood Hills, and Dawn wants to go have a cigarette, and Megan says something like, they can always tell where the fire has started, so be careful. And I was like, when I heard that, I was like, oh my god. Oh, so the fire? You mean the fire in the entire episode? The whole series is starting because Dawn is starting the fire, and it's like a big symbol. And yeah, so I was annoyed by that because I felt it was a little too, as I like to say, on the nose. And it felt a little too obvious to me. And beyond that, it felt like a terrible Billy Joel reference. I love Billy Joel, but we didn't start the fire is one of the worst songs ever written. And I really hope he wasn't making a Billy Joel reference. So that would have been awful. Anyway, so I was thinking about that. I was thinking about, once again, this is like my hatred of foreshadowing. It's that idea of like symbols where oftentimes in a lot of literary fiction that I'm not so crazy about, it often feels like the whole piece of fiction is a series of stories that are really just geared around creating a network of symbols and metaphors that eventually lead to this sort of, some sort of realization about life. And I kind of don't like this because I often feel like the realizations. Well, first of all, I feel like it's a really old way of writing. I feel like this was really created in the 50s with like New Yorker stories, or even before that. I feel like it's a very tired trope to have a bunch of characters go through a series of things, and then the symbols pile up, and then you have this wonderful realization. And the realizations are often usually very obvious things like, oh, life is so complicated or something. And you're like, I didn't really need a book to tell me that. And so I often, and they feel safe. It feels really safe. It feels like you're preaching to the choir when you're constantly telling these educated liberals that basically their view of the world of everything is wonderful and complicated, and oh, isn't life such a rich tapestry, and you're basically just reaffirming this. It feels kind of safe and, to be honest, kind of boring. So I'm always a little bit, I'm not so crazy about that. And so that's why I really like the idea of anti-symbol, where you're trying to move away from this idea of, oh, every story has to have like this network of symbols, metaphors. And it really did make me think of. It also made me think of Alain Robbe-Grillet and the Nouvelle Roman. And because I really feel like he was trying to do that as well. I mean, he was trying to move away from this overly meaningful writing and trying to get bare bones back to something that felt more real. And he did it by removing all metaphor and symbol. And so, I mean, obviously then my project is not that new, but I also feel like there was a problem with the Nouvelle Roman. I mean, first of all, this is the case with a lot of French writing. I love French writing. In fact, most of my favorite novels are French. But I sometimes feel like where they can err or where they can have problems is where they start to really telegraph that they're trying to do something important and new. And that's where people get, oh, the French are so pretentious. And it's because sometimes they have this feeling like they do something new, and then but they won't kind of want to tell you that it's new, and they kind of force it into you, and you're like, why are you trying to force it? Why are you trying to make it seem, why do you have to tell me that you're smart? Like, why can't you just show it to me? And that's what I feel sometimes with the Nouvelle Roman is it feels so labored that it feels like he really wants to let me know that he's a smart person, and it's like, come on, just do it and get over with it. But also, I mean, this book, if you've read it, if you are having sleeping problems, read this book. Oh my Lord, it is a bit of a boring book. And I think that for me is another issue too, is that I am focused on pleasure. That is my main interest in writing and in reading as well. And I don't just mean like really simple pleasure, like, oh, everything has to be like a sugary sweet pop song or like a children's game or something like that. No, you can have complex and difficult pleasures, but they're still pleasures. There's still something, you're still giving something to the reader, and you're not constantly kind of ironically making fun of their need for pleasure. And I feel like Oscar Wilde has a quote about this, and I don't really have it at the tip of my finger, but I was thinking something like, pleasure is the highest responsibility, or it's the first responsibility of writing. And I really agree with that. And so even though I want to move away from a feeling of not having symbols, I do still want to retain that feeling of pleasure that writing gives you. So having said all that, I was thinking that I should read some of my writing to you, because this week I didn't get to do a lot of reading of Karl of Knausgaard, just because I was actually writing on the streetcar instead of reading, because I do most of my reading on the streetcar. So I thought, I'll read something, because you don't really know a lot of what I'm doing. And before I read it, I do just want to make it clear that this is very rough. I literally have only just written it, and I started to edit it. Like, I started to, as I was printing it out, I was like, oh, maybe I should edit it. And I was like, no, stop. Because if I start editing it, I'm never going to want to actually read it, and I just have to accept it the way it is and read it to you, and hopefully it'll be enjoyable. Who knows? At least you'll get an idea of what I'm doing. And just to give you some setup for this is, as you might have known from previous videos I've described this, this is my second chapter, my second section, and it's from the perspective, well, it's focused on this one character named Anthea, and she is a woman who grew up in Victoria, BC, but then who moved to London, England with her mother when she was 12. And this section that I'm writing is really about her talking about that time when she was in Victoria and then she moved to London and why she moved to London. So it won't be immediately apparent how this connects, but we'll get to that in a second. Okay, so I'm going to read this to you. I became friends with Dolores Devereux, Dee Dee. She lived further down the Crescent, near the alleyway to the park. She lived with her mother, a woman always in her housecoat who smelled of patchouli, and a scent I only discovered later in London. This ancient house brand scent from Marks and Spencer. Her mother was divorced and a poet, but her poetry books were banned from our school's library, and she kept them on a shelf in her bedroom because her poems were too adult. Dee Dee and I would go swimming at the community center pool, this ugly concrete box with a little white trellis with ivy hanging off of it in front of it. Dee Dee looked like any other kid outside of the pool, but standing on the deck in front of the 70s murals of bears in swimming caps and goggles, she was a vision. She wore a black swimsuit with snow-white edging, and with her hair tied up, little blonde white fluff fuzzing out of her bun, and the dots on her earlobes from her empty earring holes. She looked, at the very least, 14. I had bought a swimsuit from the Bay with my father only a few months before, and I had been so proud of it that I wore it secretly for 2 days under my clothes when I went to school. It was bright pink with hearts sprinkled over the bodice. But now, when I was going swimming with Dee Dee, I always got into the water as quickly as possible so I could hold on to the edge as I talked to her. Dee Dee lingered on the deck, looking at the teenage lifeguards, touching her bun as if she were worried that it was anything but perfect. But Dee Dee had started diving. Her mother had spoken to the community center, so during the public children's swims, while we were all splashing around with fluorescent noodles and paddle boards, she was allowed to walk to the edge of the diving board, pause a moment, and jump in. She didn't do anything very complicated. She just stood at the edge of the board, and when she was ready, she jumped forward, touched her ankles, and then straightened out as she dived. But on the board, she didn't just seem to be getting ready for her dive. No, she seemed to be getting ready for life, for everything. It felt like she was collecting the attention of everyone in the pool before she had translated it into the swift, slippery motion of a dolphin delighting in her natural skill. I wanted to dive. I wanted to dive so bad. I told my father, and then I told my father again and again. I told him all of the time. He wasn't working so often, so I had more time to tell him while I sat in the courtyard of our apartment building and drank beer. I showed him how well I could already hold the position. I stood on the broken paving of the bleached garden and stretched my arms into the air. When he was looking at me, I slowly curved forward until I was pointing toward the ground, as if I was about to plunge into the concrete. "Thea," he said, "it's been a tight year." He said, "You know I'd get you lessons if I could." And I got really angry, and I said to him, "You would if you could. All the kids laugh at me because they know we're poor." This wasn't true at all. They laughed at me because I was strange, because I was always dancing at the wrong times. "I just know," I said to him, "I'm never going to do anything." 2 weeks later, I was in diving class. And here began my hell. Dee Dee, it turned out, was one of the best divers. Her mother would videotape her dives, and then they'd go home and analyze them on her VCR. Why was she curling her legs? They'd rewind. She needed to snap back faster, or else she'd never get a clean entry. All of the girls wore plain swimsuits except me, and I wasn't even in Dee Dee's group. I was one of the newbies, but too tall for the newbies, too. At age 12, I stood a foot taller than all the 8-year-olds from Fernwood. And although they struggled as much as I did, they looked so much better because I was 12 and they were 8. The girls were also trying out anorexia, just dipping their toe into anorexia. They all ate cottage cheese with fruit and only water for lunch, and I was the chubby girl in the bright pink swimsuit who ate ham sandwiches her father had been making since forever, and the pickles she loved to eat from the pickle juice she loved even more. One of the girls, Magda, was friends with Dee Dee. She was dating a boy, and she carried a rattling box of orange Tic Tacs that she said she needed because she was dating this high schooler. She'd pass around the Tic Tacs in the change room. No one, not even Dee Dee, not even after I ate all those pickles, thought I needed them. After 2 months, I would begin to shake whenever I had to step onto deck. I'd tell the other girls it was because I was cold. And I was cold. But it probably also had to do with the day when I walked to the edge of the board while all the girls sat wrapped in their towels and watched me. I bend over and get myself ready for the dive. And as I stare at the rocking face of the pool's water, the reflections of the fluorescent lights above me like white vinyl squares on the water's surface, I feel my stomach rumble. And then, for no reason I could later figure out as I cried on the bus, except for maybe all those ham and pickles, that was likely it. A pop of gas escapes my bottom. Yes, I farted. No one laughs at first. I was so startled by the noise and my terror that I fling myself into the pool. Underwater, I can hear the muffled laughter at the enormous splash my belly flop makes. And as I surface, I could even see Dee Dee's mom, camcorder in hand, trying not to smile. Dee Dee, obviously, no longer wanted to hang out with me. I'd go over to her house on my bike, and her mother would stand on the other side of the screen door, holding her robe shut. She'd tell me that Dee Dee wasn't at home. She told me that Dee Dee had a cold. She was having bloody noses. She was so embarrassed. And as I rode home on my bike, my, of course, pink bike, feeling like I was pedaling through chocolate, through pudding, I could imagine Dee Dee and her friend from the swim team, Magda, the one with the Tic Tacs, and they were lying on Dee Dee's bed head to toe, talking about nothing, not even talking about me. One Saturday, I couldn't take it anymore. My father was doing repair work in Esquimalt, and I decided to stay home for my diving lesson. I was eating cereal in front of the television when I heard the doorbell. I opened the door to this woman with a black bob, orange lipstick, and a silk, flowery caftan. She said, "Aunt Thea? Hello. Well, this is sort of awkward, but..." And before she could finish, I said, "You're my mother, aren't you?" And there we go. That is the story so far. I'm going to end it there. I hope you enjoyed it. As I said, it was a little rough. I was changing things as I was reading it. But hopefully you did enjoy it. If you didn't, at least you know what I'm writing, and maybe now you will never watch another one of my videos. But that's c'est la vie, as they say. I want to, once again, thank you for watching this video. If you do have questions and you want to send me a question or comment, please remember that I do put my email address in the description box for this YouTube video. And also remember that I have now activated comments on my YouTube videos. So while I hope you are not putting slurs in my YouTube comments, I don't think it's going to happen. But, you know, please be nice. Thank you. Otherwise, I will see you next week. And I hope you have a good week. And I hope I can do some good writing. See ya.